Hi and welcome back to my workshop. I'm Tony, and if you are following me, you know that we're at the very early stages of this, and well, another amazing build from Armortek. This time, this incredible 1:6 scale full metal kit of the Halftrack, or the SD.KFZ.7. I don't think I'm ever going to get used to saying that, but it's a lot easier than its full name, which is, I've got it written down here, which is the Sonderkraftfahrzeug. Please forgive me, my German followers, if I've got that wrong, but Sonderkraftfahrzeug is what I understand. This is the full name of this amazing vehicle, and it's the Series 7. Anyway, as you know, this is a commission build for Peter Windmill. Is the owner of this kit, and he has gracefully allowed me to build his kit for him, and I'm loving every single minute of it. In the last video, we got the drive cases on, we finished off all the suspension, and now it's time for me to think about getting everything else ready for the cleaning and priming and painting of the chassis. So what a really key part of this is the winch installation, and I've been looking at this, and this is an example of where the option pack and the static build kit mesh together, and it's really important. And Peter, rightly so, has got ahead and bought the option packs for this to allow me to install all the parts that allow this to come to life. So there's a really important crossover between the option pack and the static build, which I'll show you, but I've got all my parts out. And there's a lot of parts to this, and there's a lot of thinking about this, and there's a lot of setting out to think about. So what I'm going to do, first thing I'm going to do is I need to clean up this winch, the main winch case, this here. There's a bit of manufacturing flaws in here, nothing major, just going to clean that up. And then I'm probably going to just prime the back of this, because it's going to sit in place that I won't be able to get primer on. And once I've got the back primed, then we can start thinking about assembling it. And what I'll do is I'm going to test fit everything together. I'm going to test fit the motor, make sure everything fits. Take the motor off, probably, and then go on to install all the axle arms and any other small body parts I feel, if I get time in today's session, I feel I can get on here ahead of thinking about getting it painted. So that's the plan. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe, because this is the very early stages of this build, and we've got a long journey ahead. It will look as if it's coming together quite quickly, but then we will hit slow parts of the build as normal. And if you are one of my followers, massive thank you to you for all your support, and please keep those comments coming and those thumbs up. And of course, if you're one of my members, thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining there. That really means a lot to me. And I will continue to put content up on that. But if you're not going to join as a member, don't worry, please continue supporting in your normal fashion. So now, with all that said, I'm going to get set up. I'm going to go away, going to get this cleaned up. I'll do that on camera actually, and then I'll get it primed, and while we're waiting for the primer to go off, we can then start thinking about the method of assembly. So let's get that started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is on this main sort of winch mount. I don't know if you can see there in the camera, but there's just some tiny little imperfections left over from the CNC process. So I'm just going to use my scalpel blade, because it's very thin, just to try and clean that edge up. So that needs to be nice and clean, because there's a worm screw that goes in here. That's that little bit that's come off there. Just a tiny bit in here. That's that. Now, just going to check, see how sharp that is. It seems fine. I might just give that a little bit of a clean up with some wet and dry, but just using the dry version of it. Now, everything else I'm just going to clean as normal, because there's a bearing to sit in here. I'm just going to crack on with this, get all this cleaned. I'll have to clean this whole thing up ahead of painting anyway, the whole chassis up ahead of painting, but when you've got these parts to hand, it's actually quite easy to get in and do this while they're off the vehicle. And now down here, in here, ultimately there's a bearing that goes in here, so that needs to be cleaned as well. Use any tool just to stuff that in there. And that's almost got it. Bit of residue still in the part where the bearing sits. Perfect, I'm happy with that. So that is it. Now, while we've got the wipes out, we might as well give the other component a bit of a wipe over. I've been so looking forward to doing this because it's quite a critical part, and I want it to look right as well. I want it to function, but also I want it to look right. So with the cable, for instance, which will go on pretty much during the process of this, I'm going to get, I've got some paint here, some enamel paint. I'm going to grubby that up, if you like, if that's a term. But I'm just going to make it look darker and worn and more metalized and, you know, and proper and real, rather than just a shiny bit of metal. So I'll do that ahead of installing it. Then this paint takes a while to dry, so I might do that as one of the early stages of the build of this. And then I'm going to go on and I'm just going to spray, just going to prime the base of this, just this part here, with the etching primer, which I'm now buying, as you know, from King's Army Paints. And if you haven't already sort of picked up on it, but there is a discount code for you guys as well in the description of this video. So if you're in the market for buying paint, this paint is brilliant, and there's a small discount, and the more we buy collectively, the more discount we'll get. I promise you, they're not sponsoring me. It's just that they have agreed a bit of a discount for me, which is brilliant. I'm really pleased, and I'm able to pass that on to you guys as well. So this is the paint I'm going to use for the entire build. This is the primer. So now I'm just going to go away from camera. You don't want to see that. I'm going to get this painted, and then once this is dry, I can be able to come back and talk you through step by step with the assembly of this winch. Okay, while we're waiting for the primer to dry on the main housing, I thought I'd talk you through the rest of the components required for today's session. Park those up for a second. So this is all the parts you get with the static build, right? You have the cap, or the lid, that goes on the main housing, which is on my paint bench. You have this here, which goes through this part here. I think I might just have to deburr the edges of this, but in essence that's what goes in there. Then this winch wheel sits on top of that. You bolt that in, and of course you've got the cable that comes with it. Now the cable, I'm going to do some weathering on this cable just to sort of make it look a bit more realistic before it goes in, because once it's in I'm not going to be able to get to it, so I'm going to do that in a moment. You get this sort of retaining nut, which is part of the main housing, which then the worm shaft, if you like, gets passed through two ends of the worm shaft. You have this flat end here, and you've got this one here, which is a graduated fit. This end here goes inside the main housing, and this is presented so that you can get your universal joint on the other end, which then in turn connects to your motor. And there's various bearings and everything else required. On the motion pack, this is what you get. So you get your mount for the motor. You get the main motor itself, which is bolted to the mount. You get the universal joint here, and you get the main gear and worm mechanism here. And that is what I'm saying. All of that needs to go inside the winch casing ahead of putting it onto the chassis, and that is one of the key reasons why you really should be getting these option packs at the same time as the static build to get these parts done. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just get a little bit of primer on this, just a very light spray of primer on this cable. Firstly, I'm going to remove that lock. Get anything on that just yet, so I'll pop that there. So I'm going to give a light dusting of primer on that, and then I'm going to go ahead and start distressing it with this paint here, this enamel paint here, but that takes a bit of time to dry, but that's fine. By the time we get on to putting that in, we'd have moved on a little bit further. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'll be back. So that cable's now just had a very light dusting of primer on it. My next job is to apply, and I've given this a really good shake already, apply some of this enamel weathering paint to it. And I've gone and borrowed one of these from my wife's cleaning cupboard. I'm sure she won't mind, as long as she doesn't see this video anyway. I'm just going to put that in there, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to basically run that down the gloves are required for this, the full length of this cable. also get round onto the main part here, and that just gives it a really good dose of weathering. Now I'll do this a couple of times. This paint does take a long time to dry, so I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but you can already see that it's starting to change. So I'm going to find somewhere I can hang this cable up in my workshop, pop that away, get rid of the evidence. Right, so that's that. Just going to fold this up, but you can see hopefully it's already got a kind of a distressed look on it, which is what it should look like rather than the shiny cable. And when that dries, I'll be able to install that. I might just give it another little coat, but we'll see. So that's that for that. I'm going to hang this up and then I'll come back to camera. Okay, so that's that primed. Now, first job we're going to do is put this bearing in here. I'm just going to make sure it sort of fits, feels like it's going to fit well. And so we're going to put some 638 glue on this. And hopefully that will go in with no issues. Snaps in beautifully. Just make sure that it's flush. Just give that a little tap. That's in. Right. Right, so the next part is the worm arm assembly, which is this. And I've just sort of been playing around with it just to make sure I've got it right, and I think I do. So this worm screw here comes as part of the option pack. This is what you get part of the static pack. Now there's two grub screw, if you like, cutouts here to lock this in. This goes in here, lines up with, if you can see the two holes here. On the instructions, it does, in the option pack instructions, it talks about an M3 grub screw, but it's got to be an M4 grub screw. I haven't put any thread locker on this at this stage. Just going to put those down tight. I don't think I'm going to put any thread locker on that. So that's that. Then there's a bearing that goes on over the top of that. And then that all slides down into the main housing. And then you have this gear that sits, where is that? It gets bolted through to this. Let's just make sure. Isn't that, by the way, look at that. Isn't that just a beautiful piece of brass? You can see why these kits are expensive. They use the best possible materials. I think what I might do is actually get this fixed to this. So it's got some countersunk holes in the back. That goes on there beautifully. No need to deburr actually. I'm going to line those up. Going to put some blue thread locker on. Get the right hex tool. Okay, got the right hex tool now. Just wind that in, but don't tighten it up. These are, sorry, just moving that out. These are chunky old M5 12mm countersunk fixings. Now I'm going to tighten that up. I'm going to put a bit of grease on here. So, but before we do that, I just want to make sure that that all kind of works. So the idea would be that that's in there, and then this worm screw, I don't know if you can see that, rotating that, turning it. Right, so that's that. We know that all kind of works. That's that's that. So what do I do now? I'm going to put a little bit of white lithium grease on here. They do actually ask you to put grease on this. Almost done. I'm doing this in real time with you guys, so please bear with me. Okay, pop that in. Not yet. Let's get this in first. So that's locked in. I'm not going to put any thread locker on that. That's the bearing down on that. We will have to put a little bit of 638, and I'm hoping, this is tricky to get in, but I've checked the aperture for this and it looks really nice and clean. I'm not going to put too much of that on there. I'm going to slide that down into that. Get that to do, just so it's turning and is meshed. Let's put this in a clamp. Now we have this bolt, or this threaded nut, shall I say, that goes over the whole top of that. And I'm not going to thread lock this in, so I'm just going to wind that down. The bearing should be central, and I'm going to hopefully, let's go and find a spanner. Yeah, I'm just going to wind that in using the spanner. Hopefully that's going to drive that bearing right down into where it should sit. And it's nice and plumb. And that's nice and tight. Take this off. Yeah, so it is rotating, but it's a bit stiff. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put my drill on the end of that and see what happens. So I'm just going to get my drill and put this in the chuck. Very gently. See if that rotates it. Yes, it does. And you can see that rotating round. Happy with that. It's just maybe just a bit stiff. Okay. Just a bit stiff by hand, that's all. Right. Okay, so I'm happy with all of that. Next job is to put this on here, I think, and then mount this whole thing to the chassis. But I'm just going to double check all that before I commit. So decision made. I'm going to put this cover on ahead of putting the whole thing onto the chassis. I've deburred the back edge of this, so it goes on there really nice now. But before I do that, I wasn't really happy with how stiff this was. So I've undone this nut here. I've put a little bit of blue thread locker on it, and I've just then hand tightened it up, and that was about 10 minutes ago, and already it's not moving. And I don't know if you can see now, but it's moving really freely. Look at that. Beautiful. And you know what, again, it's just an amazing credit to Armortek for this beautiful engineered piece of kit. Look at it, just stunningly beautiful. Right, so that's that. I'm sorry, I'm sort of going overboard with that, but it just blows my mind every time. Right, so let's just talk through this. So this goes over the top of that. Line up these holes. There's There is a hole in this plate, but there's no hole or no corresponding hole in the main housing. I don't know if that's an error or intentional at this stage, but for now I'm not going to worry too much. And then I was cleaning up this winch wheel. So that's all clean, and you have to sort of use a circular file to go through and clean up some of the sort of edges of this, just deburr it and normal sort of thing. And I've given it a clean, and I'm thinking about the process. And obviously once that goes on, I'm not going to get paint in around this, so that's going to have to go on pretty much after everything's been painted, and I'll paint this separately. So the idea is bolt this together, bolt this to the chassis, mask this up a little bit so paint doesn't go down the holes, spray everything, spray this separately, and then I can install that at a later stage. This is a minor thing. I'll probably test fit the cable in here just to make sure it works, and then just put the cable to one side. But I just want to get this on working. I know it's not working perfectly now. Get the motor test fitted, and be happy with that before I move on to putting the axles on. So let's crack on and put the fixings into this. So looks like there's 7 fixings that go into this to bolt this down, and this one here, which, as I said, there's no corresponding hole for the or in the housing for it. So these are 10mm butt fixings. I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of blue thread locker on a couple of these. Not tightening that up just yet. I've just gone and give the cable another coat of weathering, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be ahead of painting this. I'm going to get the cable in, wrap it round, keep it tight, and put a cable tie on it, just so that I can get the cable to get used to being formed around that. I don't want it to unwind, as these steel cables tend to have a tendency, or have a tendency to do so, I should say. So that's that. Pretty happy with this so far, and as I said before, I think if you're going to be building one of these, this is a classic example of why you need the option packs quite early on. Now, pretty happy with that. I can tighten these ones up because it's all pretty much aligned. And as I like to do, just want to make sure that's still running freely, and it is. Just love the way Armortek worked this stuff out for us. Really enjoying this part of the build. I have previously checked to see if the holes align in the chassis with the holes in this, and they do, well, just by eye, I should say. So I'm pretty happy with that. Not that they would be, but it's always worth checking. And if this all goes on, I'm going to install the motor mount, the universal joint and all of that. I'll get all that sort of lined up. Temporarily just position the motor, but I'm not going to install the motor because obviously I don't want that getting any paint on it. But I want to set it out so that I know that the motor works in the right position. And I don't know yet, but it's whether on this bracket here there's some holes that bolt the motor on, and I just want to make sure I can get to those once everything's in place. So that's that. That's a heavy old piece of kit, that. I'm just thinking that the longer and the more I add to the chassis and to the build, it's going to get heavier and heavier and harder to handle. So I might, don't know yet, but I might have to displace my little hetzer to get this onto the table, the main sort of table scissor lift at some point to continue, but we'll see. Or just employ the services of my son or sons, whoever's available. So that's that. Now I'm going to reposition the camera and get this bolted onto the chassis. Okay, so this is the orientation it shows in the instructions, with the winch getting mounted at a bit of an angle like that, and then the engine mount going in that roughly that position there, so that this is angled to suit or work with the angle of the winch mount itself. Because I'm going to be working on this inverted to mount this, I just want to get this mount on first, the engine mount on first, so when I've got it turned upside down I don't get confused and put this in inadvertently at the wrong angle, something like that, which I may or may not be able to do. But anyway, that's what I want to do. I just think it makes more sense. I'm going to get this, and also it'd be trickier for me to work with this once this is on, and of course heavier. Right, so first things first, this goes in with an 8mm M3 cap fixing. Make sure I've got the right tool. No, that's the wrong tool. No, that's the right one, I'm sure. Yes, that's the right one. Sorry about that. Old cameras get, you know, the old camera issue. So I'm going to hold that in there. I'm going to try and hold that nut. On the underside of that. Okay, that's got it. Going to keep it loose at the moment because it's slotted to move left and right, and that might be something to do with helping with mounting or positioning the motor. So we'll keep it fairly loose for now. Another nut to go on there. I'll just spin that around so I can get in underneath that. That's got it. Again, just keeping it fairly loose. Want a bit of play on that. Now I'm going to turn this upside down. Oh, I'll tell you what, there's already a bit of weight to this. Now, of course, the motor then goes in, or the winch housing goes in at this angle here. These are fixed with 10mm M3 butt fixings. So put one in there first. Just position that. Go through the hole on the top, I think. And just wind that into place. All the holes seem to line up. They do. Just keeping it a little bit loose for now. Put this one in the other side. Again, come through the top of that beam to pick the hole up and go through, and that works really well actually. Again, don't tighten these up too much at this stage. I am putting a tiny little bit of blue thread locker on these. Let's go with this side. Just get that into the hole. Then come through the top. Hopefully you can see that. Again, I'm not tightening that up just yet. The last one. This is going to be decidedly heavier. Now I've got to turn it back round. I really do need to consider that, the weight of this as this gets bigger and bigger. Right, that's it. All four fixings in. It's set at the right angle. Now we can tighten these up. Handy hole that. Must be for this reason. Exactly this reason. Or could be something else, who knows. But I'm using it. It's quite convenient having that hole there. Right, that's it. Let's try and turn this back round without giving myself a hernia. Okay. Like handling a big 8-legged octopus. Fairly well balanced. Just push that a bit further back. I'll be happy in a minute. Right, so that's it. So what I'll do now, I think I will need to just zoom the camera in a bit so we can see what we're going to do here with this engine mount. And I'll do that, and then I'll be back to do the rest of it. Right, so we've got this universal joint here that needs to slide on to the shaft on here. And then what I want to do is just test the motor. So this is the motor here, so I'm just going to unpack that. I don't want to put this in yet because I don't want to be worried about masking it off and all the rest of it. And I think that this shaft goes through the bottom. I'll just see if I can line those holes up like that. But let's push this out and see. Right, so that is on the flat spot of this shaft. Is it on? Let me bring that round so I can get it on the flat spot of that. Okay, so the shaft is not. Let's have a look. It's a fair old distance actually between the two, but there's enough of the shaft on the flat spot on both of those to lock it in. Pretty sure, pretty confident with that. There's no further give in this. Right, so I might just put a couple of fixings in this motor just to locate it in the right spot. Just going to line that up and then I'll pull it out so I can get the universal joint on it. Right, get that joint on. Let's see if we can just wind that into place. I'm using the hex tool with the ball in fixing on it just because it's working at a bit of an angle. Put another one in. All these things are all worth, you can see why you have to test fit them. Okay, that's on. Oh, slipped off. Do you believe it? That's all right. Got enough room to play with that. Right, that's on the flat spot there. It's on the flat spot of the motor. How much have I got? Not a lot. Wondering whether I have to maybe slot this a bit more just to allow this motor to come forward a bit. I mean, I think that would be the right thing to do. I'd like to have a bit more either side, so I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to undo this. I'm going to slot these screws, or these, I'm going to slot these slots here a little bit more just to allow me to push this away a little bit, just enough for me to get a little bit more of a grab with the universal hinge here, or the universal joint, let's just say here. Just not enough. I want it to cover a bit more on here. Okay, I'm going to do that. Okay, so I've got these slotted now. Hopefully that gives me exactly what I want. So what I'll do is I'll pop just the fixing in this to position it. Push that down. pop that on. It's all fairly loose, of course. Move that up into the slot that I've just created. That's tight in that position there. And let's have a look. Oh yeah, that's much better. I've got enough now of the flat side to be able to lock that in. You don't want these touching the universal joint because that'll affect how it works, right? But there's enough there. There's more than, yeah, it's more than halfway past the grub screw on both sides. It's hard to see that on the camera, I guess, but that is done. I'm happy with that. So before I do anything else, I think I'm gonna lock these in. Just pop that out. A bit of thread locker on that. Obviously I'm gonna have to reposition the camera. Let me put this one on. I'll do the other one off camera, because if I turn this now it's going to knock the camera, so I don't want to do that. So but you get the general idea. I should be able to get to that one though before I do anything else. I don't want to lock that down just yet. I want to make sure that's up as far as it can go. Sorry if my hand's blocking everything. That's it, nice and tight. Now I just need to get around the other side and put the nut on my finger. I'll do that and we'll come back and we'll lock these off. Just need to hold that nut while I tighten that down. It's nice and tight. Right. So now what I want to do is I want to lock this into position. So when I put the motor in eventually, it will fall into the right place. So I'm going to unwind that. Put a bit of thread locker on that. Wind that in as tight as possible without over tightening and damaging it. So that's it. That is in the right position. Really happy with that. So I know that when this eventually goes into here, it's sitting in here so I can get to it and tighten it up. So now I can simply undo the motor, remove that. We'll of course do some testing on this at some point, but not yet. Need to get the radio gear and everything else before we do any of that. So that is that. Now it's time to think about the next step. So the next logical step for me is to get this cable on, get it wrapped as tight as I can around this winch wheel, and put a cable tie on it just to hold it in place. And this is retained by this retainer here, which has already got a grub screw in it. And I'm just trying to think, because that there, I don't know if you can see that, it's offset. It's not center. And there's obviously a reason for that. I'm just trying to work that out. Where's the hole? There it is. Okay, so that would mean, yes, so that would be the right position of this. But it's difficult to get that in, so I think, let's try it. I'm going to pop this cable through this hole, pop that on there, see if that, no, that doesn't work like that. So I need to spin that around, but if I spin it around that might be tricky, but we'll try it. Try and feed that into that hole now. That's it. That's it. Right, so what we don't want to do, I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit for you, if this allows me to. We don't want that cable overrunning, so I need to pull this out, hold that there, spin it round, Get the right tool. Tighten that grub screw up. That's in there tight. Just going to zoom back out. Excuse me. Whoa. There you go. So that's in there now. Let's undo this. Not sure if there's a right way or a wrong way to get this around the wheel. I'm just going to hold it under tension. Keep that. Just keeping it under tension all the time. I'm going to wrap the whole thing round till I have a better idea how it all's supposed to work. Now, put a cable tie through there. Hold it under tension. Like that. Hopefully that just will keep its memory, or have a memory of, you know, just wound up like that, so it won't just explode. Because I don't know how that is retained in there, unless there is something else that goes on here on the chassis that holds that in. Can't see it at the moment, but anyway, that will hold that in place until such time I need to get it on and paint it and everything else. And what I'll do is, when I'm going to paint this, I'll remove that little grub screw, take it out, do exactly the same thing to put it back in. So I don't want the regular paint getting on this. So that's that. I think we're going to go on now. Put the axle arms on. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we're going to take a few steps forward, because the next step in the instructions is to start assembling the wheels. But I think I want to get everything onto the chassis, and the chassis primed and painted ahead of doing the wheels, because the wheels are going to take a long time. So this is relatively straightforward. These are the sort of axle arms here. You have two types, an A and a B. Let me bring this into camera shot, sorry. The A with the longer shaft, the B with the shorter, stubbier shaft here. Because you've got two different types of wheel assembly. You've got the wide set and you've got the narrow set. Obviously this will be for the wider set. And from the instructions, the very first one that goes on the back here, this has already been installed. The very first one that goes on the back here is the A type. So I'm just going to test to make sure that can screw in all the way to the end without any issues. And it does. Do the same on this side. Now there's no grub screw to secure these in, so this is definitely a job for thread locker. This is why Armortek asks you to put an elastic band around this, but I'm not that bothered, because I want to be able to get paint everywhere. But that's the whole rationale of an elastic band, keeping that in place. But anyway, that's that. So I think I'm ready to go. Just double checking that the A is the very first wheel. You've got the idler wheel here, then you've got the A at the back. So we'll start there. This is going to be with red thread locker. Right, so we set up first one. I'm using red because there is no way of locking these in, and the last thing you want is these things working themselves loose. That is as tight as that can possibly go. Yeah, that can't go in any tighter than that. Rub off the excess off the back. And we go with a B type. Just goes in like that. Rub off the excess on the back. And what I will be doing, I'll be masking off, as I did on the drive gear here, I'll be masking off the axle part, the part that the wheel slides on, because I don't want to get any paint on there, as well as I will do at the back of this idler wheel arm here. So that's those, and we go again in the same sequence. A, that a bit of a turn. That's not going anywhere. So that's in. And we go at the B. All the while adding weight to this. That's in tight. Last one on this side. I was thinking, are these going to be offset the other side? But I don't think they are, because unlike the tanks, the wheels all seem to be the same alignment. Okay, we might have a problem with this one. No, it's going in. Might need a bit of gentle persuasion. There's always one, isn't there? It's going now. Nope. Should have tested that before I put it in. It's going all right now. That's it. It's not going any further than that. Let's just test fit this one this time. Of course, that one goes in, no problem at all. And what I will do before we put the wheels on, I'll just clean these up a little bit. They're all right, but they just feel a little bit rougher than normal. But I might just clean these up. I'll see how well the wheels go on, but I might just need a bit of fine sandpaper just to clean them up. So let's just spin that around. Hopefully I don't knock the camera or anything else. Right, so making sure we start in the right position. Let's bring that back in. Just test fitting that to make sure that's going in all right, and it is. Back to A again, just going to test fit that. That's a bit stiff. That'll be fine, I'll be able to get a turn on that. That needs to go tight up against that swing arm. That's it. B, let's just check. Yeah, no issues with that one. Back to A. And the last one, B. Now these will all need to be cleaned up, which I will do with a degreaser ahead of painting. Okay, so that's all the axle arms on. And we just now, the next thing would be the track tensioner here to go on. Right, yeah, let's bring it around. So the track tensioners both sides to go on. There's some body mounts to go on. I'm going to have a look and see how much else needs to go on, and then make a decision whether I continue or leave that to the next session. So let me do that, and I'll let you know very shortly. So after another long look at the instructions, I've come to the conclusion I can't do any more today on this build. It would just be too long a build session. There's still quite a lot of parts to go on here that I feel need to go on ahead of painting or priming and painting, and that's some of the body supports, certainly the track tensioners, and possibly some of the steering mechanism. I don't know yet. One unusual thing about this kit, which is wonderful really, is that it does take a lot of thinking about and a lot of planning. I mean, it's almost like you take 4 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of thing, with the way of your thinking. But I love that. I really love the challenge of it. But I just want to make sure that I get everything painted as it should. And so in the next session it will be about that, but in today's session I'm really pleased actually, because although it doesn't seem like we've achieved a lot, it has been a very productive session. Aside from getting the axle arms on and masked up ready for painting, it was the winch and all about the winch, and I wanted to get this set up correctly for Peter because it's a really nice part of the functionality of this vehicle, and I wanted to make sure it was going to work as it should. One thing I realised when I wrapped the cable up, and you eagle-eyed watchers may have noticed, I wrapped it the wrong way. I wasn't sure at the time. After test fitting it on where it should go, I realised, so I've re-wrapped it so it's now dressed on the left-hand side of the vehicle. So if this is the rear of the vehicle, my left is here, so it's dressed to the left because there's a hole here that this cable eventually passes through and gets secured onto the wheel. So that was that. So yeah, it's really now about, I'm going to do some more work on planning and thinking, and in the next session we really will start to sort of get close to the point where we can get this primed, painted, and then go on and talk about other things like the wheels, the front wheel arches and the radiator, because I was looking at those, and although they're beautifully made and casted by Armortek, they have got a textured finish, and in the real sort of examples that I've seen, they've been nice, smooth, pressed steel kind of finish. So I've got ways of dealing with that, and I'll talk you through that. But there's lots more to think about. But anyway, that was today. I really hope you've enjoyed today's session. If you have, give me the old thumbs up. That would be really, really appreciated. And of course, a massive thank you to all of my continued subscribers, all of that wonderful support, all those thumbs up, and a very special thank you to Peter. Peter Windmill is the owner of this kit, and he has entrusted me to build it for him. And I really hope, Peter, that you're enjoying these build sessions and you approve of my build method. And of course, another thank you to all of my members. I will continue putting content up in that area. So I will now finally sign off by saying, I'm Tony. I absolutely love building these kits. I cannot wait to get back into my workshop to get cracking on the next session. See you soon.